can't get up, this is bestseller TV. We got to mention the awards and all the accolades the books get. But we have questions, Alisa.
Yes. Lay them on me. Good. I'm ready. And I have the book right here. In case anyone wants to see what it looks like.
She has props. I love it.
Love it. So working with startups and then writing a book for startups, encouraging them to grow up, which is exactly what they want to be doing. But as I think many of us know, a startup is really an uncertain. It can be very wild and uncertain, and there is a lot of turmoil, a relentless turmoil. Is I think your actual term. Well, how do you encourage the startup founders to really start, I guess, managing themselves in order to manage their startup?
Yeah, thanks. That's such an insightful question. My book is divided into 3 sections: managing themselves, managing the team, and managing the business. And as you just pointed out, it starts with managing yourself. And so in sort of the muck and mire, startups are an extreme work environment. So what you have to do is take care of the asset, and you are the asset. You've got to sort of make sure that you're up to date and up to speed on getting enough sleep and getting enough nutrition and having things that will help you de-stress. So meditation, fitness, people around you. That's kind of the baseline of managing yourself. And then if you think about you in connection with your role, you absolutely have to manage yourself in line with what it's like to show up with work with you every day. So you got to have some self-awareness, what, ticks you off, what sets you off, what's a trigger for you, what may constantly get to you. Like one CEO I work with has a sort of flavor of the month mentality. So every time someone new shows up, he's like, oh, that's going to be our savior. Well, that person's going to, handle everything. And then of course a month goes by and then, miracles don't happen. And so he's on to the next person. He needs to have some self-awareness about that, so he doesn't get caught up in playing favorites, constantly showcasing like this person's going to somehow save us. And there are a million other triggers, normal, natural, peccadillos that we all have, that you as a founder have to get a handle on. And the third aspect of that is about getting 360 feedback, because you are the expert on your intention, but everybody around you is the expert on your impact. And part of leadership success, which ultimately leads to startup success, is your ability to manage and to marry your intention with the impact you're having.
How do you get comfortable? Because I know, I remember going back to when I would have been what I thought was a pretty clever CEO, a pretty good leader. I think a 360 feedback would have just terrified me. Do you ever get any resistance to that, or any pushback on people wanting to do that?
Do I ever get any resistance to pushback? Every single time. Who wants to do that? Why would I do that? Right? So yeah, of course. And there's first of all pushback about why. Well, I would say initially everyone's like, oh yeah, I totally want to do that. And then when it's like, okay, let's do that. Oh, let's wait. There's a lot of waiting. And then when you finally do that and you present the results, the most normal reaction is defensiveness and explanation, right? So now I work with startup founders, and so they're pretty, quick on the uptake, and they're really quick to agree it's all true, but not before they're able to explain their side of the story. So as a coach, and you know this, Rhett, my job is to listen patiently to their side of the story so that we can then be on the same side of the table looking at the thing together, which is the most important thing. Because on the one hand, it's all true. And on the other hand, I really understand why you do that. Okay, but you got to change it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Nice. I'm getting nervous. We're not even doing this for me. Oh, wow. And okay, sorry. So now I have to know. So the section 1 is managing yourself. Check. Now you do the 360 review begrudgingly, and you go into it.
Yeah.
And then there's the managing the team, right? That's the second. So I guess, how do you do that? And in these 360 feedbacks, do people just say, oh, well, this person doesn't like me? You know what I mean?
Well, right. It's a little more sophisticated. This person doesn't like me. This person doesn't do it right. This person has their own issues, right? Like that. But once you get there, the most powerful way, like basically, again, it comes back to this. What do you want to be successful? Great. That's what I want to. So what you need to do to be successful is to recognize how you're showing up and then intentionally set the terms, the conditions for how you think you should show up, how you want to show up. And then based on what you already know, do different things, some of the same things, some of different things to show up in that way, period. Like you want to be a great leader, you got to kind of picture what's a great leader. You got to assess where you are right now on that leadership spectrum. And then you have to act that way. So in my book, I have a number of leadership, let's say styles, or let's say dichotomies that help you dial up or dial down the elements that you need to be a successful leader. So for example, communication. How do you communicate? Well, you might be somebody who walks around saying whatever pops into your head. That's great, except that then everyone takes what you say and runs off and does it because they don't realize you're just brainstorming, right? On the other side of that is that you don't share anything with anybody, right? You just sort of tight-lipped, and then nobody knows what's going on. And in the silence, they create their own reality, or they whisper, oh, how's the boss today? What are we doing? What do you think we're doing? What have you heard? Right? So that's communication. The models be, how do you handle stress? You clam up, you take it all on yourself, you emote, you vent to everybody about the stress. Now, of course, you want to follow the right appropriate place in the middle of some of these different dials. And you've got to find your way in that. And again, I have sort of a tool in the book to help you dial those different things. But then best practice, and Rhett and I talk about this, and Rhett knows this, it's like the idea is to go back to the stakeholders to say, all right, it's all true. It's all true. Here's what I found out. I found out this great stuff, right? I found that everyone thinks I'm super committed. I've got great vision. I'm great at studying the strategy, and I work harder than anybody else around here. I'm so happy to show up that way, right? On the other hand, I found some things that were not so great. I explode at people when I don't mean to. I can sometimes not be a great judge of talent, and I can be very disorganized when it comes to follow-up. I own it. It's all true. So therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start keeping a list of all my deliverables and find a chief of staff to help me stay organized immediately. And what I'm going to stop doing is, expressing myself in an explosive way. I'm going to handle my emotions and my temperament, and I'm probably going to start meditating in the morning and learning to count to 10 before I react. And so you tell everybody that, and their first response is, can you believe he said that? Oh my God, I know. Wow. And so as in like people, you get a lot of credit just for feeding back to the stakeholders. Okay. And then you begin to engage them in the process of change, which means, hey, have you noticed I haven't exploded anybody in like 10 days or 2 weeks or a month? And then they begin to trust that you're making these changes. At the same time, with 360 feedback or any tool, you recognize, you, the founder, recognize that like your team needs to step up too. So getting back to your question, the management elements of that. What does that mean, step up? So for example, he doesn't delegate enough. Well, I don't delegate enough because they can't handle it. Interesting. Who hired them, right? Who hired them that can't handle it? And how are you teaching them and coaching them or holding them accountable, or frankly, finding new people who can handle it so you can free yourself up to do the things you need to do by delegating. So that's how those things work together. And there are a set of management tools that I teach and review and give examples of in my book, including delegation, including how to give feedback, including how to coach people, including how and why to give positive feedback to people to help them, help motivate them, and help keep them giving you their best efforts.
Yeah. That's remarkable. And thank you for really, really spelling those out, because I could go on about that part of it, because I'm fascinated by team dynamics and how all the feedback works and how people respond, and the change in an organization when they really see the leader or the leadership trying to be better.
Exactly.
And the power of going back to them and saying, thank you. This is, this is going to help me change and be better. There's so much power in that. let me ask you this: were there some pivotal moments in working with clients or in your experience, the sort of, there were light bulbs that went off in your head and you said, I've got to put this on paper. I've got to write this book. What were those moments? Like what drove you to write this?
Yeah. So I would often go into a new environment and I would say, how often do you meet with your leadership team? And they would say, what's a leadership team? And I felt like I wish I had a book to hand you to help prevent unforced errors so that you would kind of know some of the mechanics. And I didn't find that book. And so I decided I'm going to write that book. That's what I want to do. Like, I want to be able to articulate some of the mechanics that you just need to set up a business, run a business, and scale a business. And then what I didn't mention is I have in the back of my book 14 scripts to help with delicate conversations, difficult conversations. Because another thing that I found out is that I would, we'd finally get to the place where they're going to say the thing to the person they haven't said. It's right now. It's where we're at the moment. And then they would say, but what do I say? And I would say, well, why don't you just say plunk and say, like, la, 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 la. And I would land what they should say. Oh, and they're taking notes furiously. And I, as I was writing my book, I thought about those moments and I thought about how valuable those scripts were. And I thought, I'm going to write those scripts, because just getting your mouth around the words and knowing what to say turns out to be massively valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sit on the other side. You guys are you coach, right? And I actually find that like being the coach in these experiences, like very frustrating. So I think there's like a level of patience and maybe it's like a different time in your life, but I admire people who can do it because I see the need. I have, the need myself, but to actually do it. And I think part of it when you talk about writing the book out of those moments is if I were working with you, I would probably get frustrated and then would love to go back and read your book and try to get inside your head a little bit myself, right? And I've worked with so many startups that it's like, yes, that's how they think. I wonder, is it better for someone you're working with to read your book before they meet you, to read your book after they meet you, or to have it on hand while they're working with you?
All of the above.
Okay, great.
Just get the book.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what is it? And what stage typically do you work with, and what are some of the most common struggles that you see with your startups?
Well, I work all across the spectrum. So I work with, I wouldn't say so many Series A companies anymore, but some small companies all the way through IPO. I wrote, one of my clients is DraftKings. They're a public company. And I also work with some large enterprises as well, because I think that they really appreciate and benefit from kind of the entrepreneurial mindset that I bring into the environment. And certainly startups appreciate and have a lot of appreciation for the more process-oriented perspective that I bring to the table. But I think some common, some normal and common challenges that all CEOs have, founders, CEOs, large companies, small companies, are that you as the leader, it's sort of, these are two counter thoughts, right? These are two paradoxes. One is that when you walk around and you say what you say, your suggestions are orders. Your inklings are orders. Your brainstorms are orders. Your whispers are orders, and your orders are orders. So they run off and do what you told them to do, whether or not you meant it. So one of my clients lives in Texas, and they had a Christmas party down the street. And he came back the next day and said, oh, if it were any more, the only way it could have been more convenient is to have it in the parking lot. Ha, 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 ha. And then in August of the following year, they said, do you want a tent for the Christmas party? He's like, a tent? What are you talking about? You said you wanted the Christmas party in the parking lot. He's like, no, I didn't say that. But yeah, you did. Yeah, apparently you did. And so, you have to be mindful of what you say. Now, again, paradoxically, they're also not listening. So you articulate the vision, they don't hear it. You tell them what's going on. You tell them, sort of who the customers are. You narrate the roadmap. You explain the culture. You talk about your expectations, and they don't hear you. You have to repeat yourself over and over and over and over again until you're sick of it, until your message finally begins to get through. And CEOs don't realize that. One of the CEOs I work with, she at one point, she was very frustrated because her team wasn't doing it right and all the things. And so I said, well, have you told them your expectations and calling your cultural norms? She said, yeah, of course I told them. Oh, well, where have you told them? I sent them a Slack message. And then I was like, okay, well, show me, right? I'm interested. And she had to go all the way up to the top of her Slack. She couldn't even find it. I'm like, well, if you can't find it, you think they're thinking about it? They're not thinking about it. You've got to constantly be communicating what you're thinking, what you want, your expectations, the game plan, the vision in large group meetings, in small groups, in one-on-ones, in writing, in speech. And then the message will get through. And that's very important because not only are they not listening to you until finally you get through, but also you got new people joining every day. Also, you don't even realize that you've changed your mind ever so slightly. And you've got to tie up those loose ends for people where you told somebody something and it was different from what you told a few other people. And so now they're talking to each other and they don't quite get it. So you've got to constantly be tying up those loose ends and re-narrating your story and getting the buy-in of your employees so everyone's on the same page knowing what's going on.
I want to go back. Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
No, I was just reminiscing.
I want to go back a second and talk about self-management because I'm coaching with a client right now, and we came to this sort of realization today that there were some triggers in her life that are really getting in the way. And as we were preparing to sit with you today, you talk about triggers in the book. And so how do you, and maybe you can coach me here on how to talk about this, a little live coaching here from Alisa Cohn. How do people deal with, how do you, number one, realize it's a trigger?
Yeah.
Because I think often we don't really catch that, right?
Right. It just seems like the most natural thing to do.
Right. We blame it on the person. We blame it on their performance. We blame it on their attitude. We blame, we see all kinds of reasons why it's that person's fault. How do we recognize it, number one, and then stop it and then adjust the behavior?
Well, if I'm going to coach you a little bit, can you give us a little more information about the trigger that we're talking about?
No, I just think that there's some things going on in their personal lives, right? In their personal life that are affecting, and I think they react to somebody in the business based on some other things going on in their life. And I think there's something in the business that triggers an emotional reaction that's not warranted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. So an overly expressive, let's say, emotion, and it's emotional reaction. So I think it's a really interesting point. Like, how do you identify your own triggers, or how does someone help you identify triggers? So number one, if there's a pattern, right? So I love the saying, when you go outside and somebody is a jerk to you, that person's a jerk. But when you go outside and two people are a jerk to you, maybe you're the jerk, And I think that's very powerful to think about, because when something keeps happening over and over again, you can think it must be them, but you have to take on that it's you, just even as a learning experiment. So then you can say, okay, what if it is me? What would be the meaning of that? Why would I be happening over and over again? What might be going on with me? The second thing would be 360 feedback definitely helps you enlighten and get illuminated about your own triggers, because they will say, for example, when, I will say, like, I worked with a CEO one time and he canceled the leadership meeting. And I found out, I was like, you canceled the leadership? Yeah, I'm not having more leadership meetings anymore. How come?
Oh, he canceled it permanently. Okay.
He permanently canceled his leadership meeting. Yeah. Well, how come? Because it takes too much time. Too much time. Really? It takes too much time to sync up your senior team? Tell me more. Yeah, it's like really frustrating. And then, and then it's just too time consuming. And then we don't get anywhere. And it's really, frustrating. And I'm just kind of going, really? Then it turned out my CTO is disruptive in the leadership meetings. And then it turned out I can't stand my CTO and I can't be in the same room with him. So rather than address that, I'm going to cancel the leadership meeting, right? So
Wow.
that's interesting, right? That's interesting. So the trigger there is someone is bothering me, bugging me, like annoying me. And the reaction is I cancel or I shy away from and don't confront whatever is going on. And then there's a question of, is that showing up anywhere else? No. Okay, well, you sure? Right? Is that showing up at home? I'm just asking the question. And then you get to look at that and unpack together where else that shows up. And then you realize that when someone's bugging you, you get triggered by that. By the way, when someone's bugging you, it's annoying. And so it feels like a natural reaction to just be annoyed. But I would say, first of all, as a CEO, you don't have that luxury. And second of all, you've got to dig a little deeper. Why is this person annoying me and why am I tolerating that behavior?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a way to live, right? It's not a way to.
Right. Right. For sure.
Can you have the opposite problem though? Could you over internalize or blame yourself to the point where you actually don't see, like it becomes foggy to the faults of other people?
Yes, absolutely. I just spoke today to a COO. And she's running the whole rhythm of the business, of course, into leadership meetings and the cadence and the operating model and all these things. And according to her, she's getting a lot of pushback from one of the co-founders. And the other co-founder, who's also the CEO, is kind of being absent, as in like, yeah, do what you want. So she's now dealing with the, let's say, rather tempestuous co-founder and some members of his team who, it seems like, are being rather abusive to her, actually. And her reaction is, I'm not doing it right. Because what they're saying is these systems are not working. These committees are not working. These meetings are not working. And her reaction is, oh, I'm so sorry. As opposed to, I know they're not working. We're going to do it wrong until we get it right. Grow up, right? Or if you don't like it, which I hear you, why don't you partner with me and help me figure out what is going to work better, as opposed to constantly criticizing? Because who are you being in this matter, Mr. Co-founder?
She's out on an island by herself because she's getting nowhere.
Exactly, and not really getting any support. And you know what's going to happen ultimately? She, who's really great, is going to quit. Because she loses her, not because even she's being abused, which for better and for worse, she can take, because she just loses her confidence and thinks, I can't do a good job here. I can't win. And then she quits. And now what are you going to do? Right? You lost a great employee who may not be doing a fantastic job right this second organizing these meetings, but give her some time, let the process play out. And a year from now, these are going to be great meetings, but you'll never get there if you can't nurture her, right? So that your point about like everyone's got their own, and she has to be aware of her own self-awareness triggers.
Yeah, indeed.
Confident.
Well, I hate that we are at the end of the conversation. It
kills me. Crushing.
We
could talk all day.
We could. I mean, but no, in all seriousness, I think there's a lot. I mean, you know where we are in leadership today, and what the challenges that leaders are having. I mean, are just everybody says it's always hard, but I do think it's harder today. I think there's so much. I think there's so much more to worry about. I mean, even my 17-year-old's talking about getting canceled. I mean, there's so many things that we have to, and so there's so much to unpack and talk about. So I appreciate the time today, and again, this is a really great book, people, if you haven't gotten it already, because if you're an entrepreneur, as it comes across the screen, is start from startup to grown up. Alisa Cohn, where can people find it? Oh,
well, they can find my book. You can find it actually by going to my website, alisacohn.com/startup. So it's ALISACOHN.com/startup. No E's in any of my names. And you can also go to my website and find a whole bunch of other things, including 5 additional scripts to help you navigate in the world. They're not in my book. They're different scripts, and one to make your life better. And there's a whole bunch of other resources on my website. And you can also come and say hi on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter and all the things.
Don't you even have some things that they can download, some other tools? I think you have a couple things that are pretty cool to do on that site, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, indeed. It's you can get my book From Startup to Grown Up. You can download my scripts for delicate conversations. And I also have other tools I'm putting up, which are about the co-founder prenup, which we didn't even get to talk about, which is about how do you manage your most important relationship? Because when you have a co-founder, you have a marriage. So you better have a prenup to help you navigate that relationship, as well as some tools to help you build your culture and a little fun 2-pager on unintended toxic cultures.
And so the other thing is you do have a podcast of the same name.
Yeah.
Where I know you go into these things really more deeply than we get to in 30 minutes here today. Where can they get the podcast? Because I think that's if this topic's important to them, to the audience, then this is a great place to get more on this.
Yes. Thank you very much, Red. I should have said that myself. My podcast is also called From Startup to Grown Up, and it's available where all podcasts are found. I listen to it on Apple, but you can also get it on Spotify, on Amazon, all the things. And if you get confused, come to my website, alisacohn.com/podcast, and you will find it there.
And we'll put all those links in the podcast.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much again for being here, Alisa. Rhett, thank you as always. And for everyone watching, this is Bestseller TV. We will be back next week with another amazing author, and we will see you soon.